Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another show. I am Infinity Watch, and I am joined by the show's three other hosts, and we are coming to you live from the trenches. How is everyone tonight? Hope you're all doing well. The main topic of the show is going to be about, we're going to be talking about sustainability in many different aspects, and we have a great document with some great bullet points that we're actually going to use as a basis for it. And the link to that document is actually in the description box for those who are interested. But before we go into the main topic, I have two announcements regarding the show. The first announcement is, unfortunately, Truth Undenied will no longer be part of the show. He has left for personal reasons, and we all wish him very well and success and peace in his endeavors. And the second announcement is, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the newest member to our show as one of our hosts, and his name is Wolf Warrior Radio. So without further ado, I'd like everyone to welcome Wolf to the show. And hey, Wolf, why don't you say a few words about yourself, please?
Yeah, glad to be a part of this wonderful little broadcast you have here. I'm just like anybody else. I mean, I haven't been awake my whole life, but I have been looking at the world and what it is, and have pretty much followed this journey and meeting all kinds of different people. And, that's what it's really all about. And I'm thrilled and excited even to actually become a part of the lives of all these wonderful people. And I just want to say that, I don't mean to replace Truth Undenied at all in any way. We all have our own different, unique personality, and it's not anything personal at all. I just saw this opportunity to actually spread some wonderful information with some wonderful people, and that's what it's all about, again. So, today it's all about self-sufficiency, and, a lot of people have a problem with the words sustainability because they think of Agenda 21 and all that stuff, but I guess, the main thing about this entire topic is, how we can stop becoming dependent on the very individuals that want to corrupt our world, basically make our lives more and more controlled. And the thing is about total self-sufficiency, it's more so a whole way of life. It's being completely self-sufficient that requires a full-time commitment. And one thing you have to be aware is it's not an easy option to become self-sustainable and self-responsible. But that's why no one is really doing it, because people are complacent today. And they always take out the easiest option out there. And, but the reward from growing your own vegetables, from creating and crafting your own medicines and your own supplies and tools, is basically building a community. And that is, if there's one thing that can actually counteract all of this stuff that we have as problems before us, it is that, a united community and people that are basically opting out of all these systemic issues. And where do you begin when it comes to self-sufficiency? The thing is, why would you benefit from it? What kinds of things, why would somebody start doing that? It's a way of actually, reducing costs and having a better food budget. You also prepare for a future where energy will be scarce and expensive. You take control of the welfare of what you're eating and what you're growing and putting into your bodies, and and you also, what I feel very important is you're reconnecting with the land and with the past, and I feel that is something that is incredibly lost in today's society. We often look in this in this world as basically a sterile place with no traditions, with no actual honor, and it's something where you can have like-minded people with whom you can swap ideas and experiences with, whether it be about gardening or about just anything in general, just could be preparing food or something. It's one of those ways where we can actually create bonds and bridges between people that understand all this knowledge and thus create a actual resistance rather than, just a bunch of people talking about the New World Order. So, but take it away, Infinity.
Well, you brought up some great points, and we're definitely going to dive right into it. But before we go right into the meat of the order, I would like Tiffany and Chad to say a few words. Say hi to everybody, guys.
Hi, everybody, guys. I like this wolf guy. I say we just let him talk, and I'll be back in 2 hours. This is good.
No.
Yeah, I think that could easily be done.
I don't work for free.
No, I love what you brought up about the community thing, too, and I'll be interested to get into that because that is one of the things that I see a lot of value in that's going to help, well, that can help anyone. And in times of stress and chaos and critical situations, a community is probably the best resource that anybody can have.
Definitely.
Yes. Miss Tiffany, care to say some words?
No. I had my volume up really high, and Chad came in, and I think he blasted one of my eardrums out. Just, I was like, whoa. No, I'm happy to have Wolf here, and yeah, Birdie wants to say hi.
Hi, Birdie.
Yeah, hear him?
Yes,
and,
ladies and gentlemen, that's the bird she has in the background. If you hear that chirping noise, that is a live bird, live from the trenches. But go ahead, Tiffany.
Yeah, Birdie.
Love it.
Birdie, I try and get Birdie to go away while I do this, but he thinks he's involved in everything. But no, I like this topic too. I'm really into you know, I guess the polar opposite topic of this, and as far as you know, how everybody talks sustainable living and progressive thinking, which would be, you know, the movement to get us away from self-sufficiency and stuff. So I'm excited to hear what Wolf has to say and comment on that, and yeah, that's all I got.
Cool. You know, I'm looking at this document here, Wolf, that we're about to go into, and it's quite impressive. And I recommend to anyone, again, that wants to look to see this for themselves. I mean, it's basically bullet points, but it covers so much stuff that every single thing here is like a 3-hour conversation, at least on each bullet point.
That's right.
So it's in the description box at your leisure. Check it out. It's definitely something you might want to bookmark. But yes, man, you know, sustainability on every level, whether it be something simple as keeping enough batteries and water in supply, to your mental health, to your spiritual health, sustaining the earth on a grander scale, what we do with the environment, what we do with ourselves, our community, children, and the list goes on and on. So let's just get into this, Wolf, and why don't you start off and, you know, tell us about this document that you created, and let's get into some bullet points.
Yeah, this is basically part of a little project I was working on that I kind of called Sophia, because in the Gnostic tradition, Sophia was the name for the earth, and also it is the name of wisdom in Greek as well. And you know, it is extensive because it covers a lot of basically every facet of life that we have. It's just a matter of, you know, putting it all together and kind of applying it to this world. But with regards to self-sufficiency, I mean, I've been actually looking at a lot of different books and videos and manuals and all kinds of stuff, and I'm still in the process of uploading all of that. It's like 12 gigabytes of information, but it's amazing, you know. This is not taught at all in any education system, in any mainstream information source, because of the fact that how freeing it is. And you can start to create your own soil. You can filter your own water. You can actually defend yourself if you need to, you know. What self-sufficiency is really about is actually personal development and personal growth, because what you'll find is when you start putting the right stuff in your body, you start training yourself, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually. We are capable of so much more than we've actually been led to believe. And I think we can start it with permaculture, because permaculture is really the quintessential aspect of self-sufficiency. And for those of you that don't understand about what permaculture means, it's basically a form of growing food or maintaining the land or keeping livestock in a way that actually benefits the environment and actually increases the abundance that we have, instead of actually depleting soil and, you know, putting fertilizers and stuff like that. But it covers everything. I mean, it's like, you know, why would we actually use agriculture where we're just monocropping one food product and that actually depletes soil and goes on forever. But you can actually have gardens in forests and on lawns and stuff like that. And if you look back in history, traditionally lawns were actually gardens themselves. It's just today people have this impression that it should be homogeneous and just grass, But yeah, we can talk about permaculture if you want, because that covers all of the, I guess you can say, gardening aspect of it,
Yeah, and off the bat, I mean, I'm a city boy, and there's not really much gardening going on. I mean, people have private homes and they grow tomatoes and stuff, which is great, but I don't live in that type of environment where I have access to a backyard where I can grow my own stuff. I'm pretty confined to just an apartment. So besides windowsill growing, I really don't have the knowledge nor the capability of really growing anything for my own sustainability. So, I'm already questioning what would be like for a larger scale type of farming for big cities that are not that are like centralized. And one thing comes to my mind is, I forgot the term for it. It's basically like a whole building, and like every floor is just like a different greenhouse or a different growing center.
Exactly.
But it's massive, though. You're talking like 25, 30 stories, and there's
Yep.
several of them. I don't know what the technical term for that is, but that comes to mind as far as a solution for sustainability going forward in the event of, say, a reconstructing of society, and there still are cities and people are still civilized with each other, that we actually come to terms that we still need food to grow, and it has to be done a different way than going to the supermarkets and getting the GMO meat and the GMO products and all the other
Yeah.
crap. But anyway, as far as that is concerned, I mean, that's a whole nother topic. But that just pops to my mind given my direct situation. And I think that when it comes to sustainability, it does start with ourselves, our immediate surroundings. Like you say, what we put in our bodies, what we drink, the air we breathe, and the environment we live in. How can we make it more sustainable, given the fact that what we live in today is not very sustainable. Yes, we are being sustained, but it could be done so much better. It's still very unhealthy the way we live in general. Besides private habits and stuff like that, I'm speaking on a macro level. But anyway, so yeah, I think permaculture, we can start off with that. It's essential, and if anybody else wants to chime in, please do.
I like the idea of what you said about the yards. I never really considered that before. Originally, people's yards were gardens. I mean, everyone had a garden, and if every single person in any community was just gardening that much area, that would provide for the entire community, which is an amazing idea. I think it'd be a lot more useful than the pretty green lawns that people have merely for vanity. Not that I'm trying to put Walmart out of business. I mean, it's great to be dependent on the machine and have to go to the grocery store, but I'm just saying, there is alternatives.
Right.
Yes.
And if people are in urban areas, because most of the world is actually shoved to live there because there's jobs and all that stuff, there are many opportunities to actually greenify, if that's a word, to put that kind of thing in those areas. I mean, there was a TED Talk that I watched that we probably could play, but we'd get copyrighted for it. The man goes by Ron Finley, and he's known as the Guerrilla Gardener. And basically what he did is he used all of those little grass patches that you see on sidewalks and everything, and he just turned them into basically free gardens for people. Because in his part of the area, I don't know if he was from Detroit or I don't know. All the food that's around there is basically McDonald's and fast food chains and stuff like that. So he's like, no, that's not going to work for me, and basically introduce people to this free stuff. I mean, I posted a link in the side chat as well to my Pinterest page, because I've been collecting a lot of different data on, or just little pictures, information, and lists and stuff like that about windowsill growing, and the idea that we can have this collaborative. And the important thing to consider when it comes to either permaculture or self-sufficiency is that you don't have to be the department store and make everything. In fact, it's actually not really a good idea to do that, because nobody has time to do that. But if your neighbors in your apartments grow tomatoes and you grow lettuce and someone else grows cilantro or something like that, then you can start to have that kind of exchange between people, and almost like an interdependence. You have like a kind of niche system that is really resembled in nature with different species.
Exactly. And it would also bring that community together because you're
Yeah.
not only working with other people, maybe in helping with their community garden, but if everyone's doing their little bit and then exchanging among the community, then it brings a value of knowing your neighbors that most of us have completely lost today.
That's right. Because people know their friends from across the city, but they don't know their next door neighbors. And that's the division that's been apparent in society since forever.
Yes, and I am guilty of that myself. I live on a block of, say, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's over 150 people on my block, give or take, and very few people really know each other. I mean, besides hello, goodbye, it's not like the old days where neighbors would go over each other's houses. It was much more intermingled. People would be out in front of their houses into the late hours, like in the summertime and stuff. That seems not to exist socially in my neck of the woods anymore, where, you know, you just can't knock on your neighbor's door and just ask for sugar or something simple like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important. That's part of the communication that we need to start having in our smaller communities. It's so important. I mean, and maybe some of the listeners or other people already have that established, and that's great. Because every region is different, and everyone's relationships are different. It's not always the same cut model. And you definitely drive home a good point that we need to work as a community together, because otherwise I feel it won't thrive. It's just every man for himself with my own garden and this, that, and the other. I don't think that would be a sufficient way to be sustained if you want to, change the system, so to speak, and thrive on that way of living, which is much more healthier, but it definitely requires a community cooperation, whether it be 10 people or whether it be 300 people in those
Yeah.
small groups and small clusters of people. I'd like to hear a little bit from Tiffany, actually, about how she feels so far about what we're talking and about the food aspect. Tiffany, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
I think that it's very important. I mean, the food aspect is extremely important to me, especially with, our own personal health and maintaining a lifestyle that's going to limit us from as many toxins as possible that we're putting into our systems. Now, today, food that we're eating, what we're consuming, it's not natural. Even, the organic foods, I mean, everything is engineered and it's just so unhealthy. And I don't think people understand the severity of it, and I don't think they understand the consequences that we're winding up with because of what we're putting in our bodies. And I think we need to definitely get back to a more natural, homegrown way of living and being able to be self-sufficient. Chad, you say you don't want to put Walmart out of business, but
Dishes actually do.
yeah, maybe. I on the other hand, I kind of do. No, I'm kidding.
Exactly.
It's not that Walmart's bad. I mean, Walmart's convenient, but what it stands for is bad, and what it stands for is the overall monopoly of our retail structure, and having it be overshadowed by one gigantic entity where nobody can compete. Nobody can compete. Pretty soon, what's going to happen? All we're going to have is Walmart. That'll be it.
That's right.
No, and I hope I'm on the topic. I got to be honest with you guys. I had to get up and go find my phone charger, so I missed whatever we were saying 30 seconds before.
It's all good.
before Infinity told me to come in, so I was like, oh shit, we're all moved. Blow it, but no. So that's. Go ahead.
Oh no, that's all right.
But that's my take on the whole, being self-sufficient with our food. I think it's good to be prepared and to be able to know how to have these skills and to hone them. So if something happens, you can feed your family.
Exactly.
So
And I love what Louder Rain's mentioning in the chat room, because it's not, this same thing applies not just, of course, to food, but with any skills that you might have. Louder was saying that she crochets, and that was a good way to, make things to be able to barter or trade, and that, if everyone has some type of skill that they can offer for exchange, then that goes a long way.
Yeah, we'll get to all that, true. But it's something to understand, at least in the principles of permaculture and gardening, and actually this way before civilization, because civilization basically started when we started agriculture and monocropping for some reason, is that there's no waste that's produced, or very little. And when you look at our society today, everything that comes out of it is basically turns the raw materials of this planet into waste, into rubbish, because nothing is built to last. And then you have, manifestations of that, like the Pacific garbage patch, which has never been talked about in any media at all. And it's very easy. I mean, you get a bit of soil, some red wigglers. You can find them anywhere. It sells them, or even on Craigslist or something. And any waste that you have, kitchen waste, banana peels, eggshells, things like that. It actually adds to the soil, and you actually can compost indoors, produce your own soil for your own plants, and it's actually far more nutritious than fertilizer or anything like that. But you're not wasting anything. Everything is being used. Even plastic bottles. I mean, I have to buy some distilled ozonated water that comes in these large tub-like plastic bottles, about 5 gallons, and they're great. They're great containers for actually planters and starting up, any kind of indoor gardening. I know people have problems with, the plastic leaking into it, but apparently it's all good, and you can contain that as well, even in the sun shining. But
and Wolf, because some people might not be aware of what you mentioned there, you said it's not been mentioned on any media, but I am aware of the pile of garbage floating in the ocean larger than the North American continent.
Yeah.
Could you expound on that a little bit? Just because most people, it's not even something that's on their radar.
Yeah. Basically, there's these currents that actually bring up all the waste that we, dump near beaches or flush down toilets or something like that. And it all collects basically in the middle of the Pacific, past Hawaii and where all those different, wave patterns actually assimilate. And the result is this island, literally, of waste. And what it's done is actually trapped and killed a lot of wildlife that happens to come across that. And it's huge. It's just amazing to me that's even exists.
Yeah, how we deal with waste and the transformation of it and what we can use of it and how we disintegrate it, for lack of better words, is hugely important. And that's something, no matter what type of society we have going forward, or whether this one gets maintained, however the scenario plays out, it always is and always will be an issue. It's very, very, extremely important how we deal with our waste.
And it's not even just growing food to eat, but medicine to heal. A lot of these herbs that people kind of shrug off as just, culinary devices are actually very, very powerful healing tools. And they're very easy to grow as well. Things like lavender or chamomile or cilantro or basil, they have very powerful antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal properties. And once you can grow them, the limitations are not even there. I mean, the sky's the limit, basically. You can extract them, you can create tinctures. Aloe vera, in fact, is used for all cosmetic purposes. You can actually ingest it as well. You can make your skin more vibrant. You use it as shampoo or body wash, But again, a lot of this looks on the media or, any kind of mainstream information source as crazy, because we already have all that stuff in the grocery stores. Why would you make it yourself? Well, because I don't want all the ingredients that corporations put in all these things. I'd rather just have the raw kind of gifts from the land than basically stuff that's put in there to poison us.
Right.
And I think I've even heard, it might have been you, Wolf, that has mentioned this before about how many of these herbs and plants are performing vital functions in the soil like filters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, we've removed, or most of them have been removed, and eroded the topsoil, those kind of things. So it's been a long process.
Yeah. Yeah. Once we understand that we're fundamentally connected to all the natural processes on this planet. I mean, like, people have even used urine as fertilizer, and manure, in fact, depending on your diet, can be used as actually very powerful soil fertilization. You know, we'll find that we shouldn't detach ourselves constantly from this. That, you know, this society has basically robbed us of these universal rights to actually connect with all of these processes and species, you know.
I'm fascinated by the people that do their home gardening and they have a compost bin or a compost pile, and they instead of throwing that waste away, they reuse that waste as minerals and natural fertilizer for the soils, which, again, if we're talking about long-term sustainability, that's it seems like everything needs to be recycled through the entire beginning and end of this cycle. And by doing that, that's the only thing that's sustainable long-term.
Yeah, nature doesn't waste anything. Everything is recycled. Even our bodies are recycled. And the idea behind that, it's very, very important to understand, is that when that moment comes that most of the people understand as, you know, sheep hit the fan, we we actually can completely opt out of even that by having a lot of this stuff in place. You know, that's why it's so important to have mechanisms that do build community, or at least assure some sense of security that is freeing for the individual and the family, for the neighborhood, right? Because then there's no reason to panic. The system shuts down, so what? We have our own system in place. You know?
That's why they're pushing so hard to move us away from that. That's why they're pushing so hard to build city centers and to have people who are, where they're redefining the sense of community and what that term means. You know, ultimately, when they're creating these sustainable communities and this new sustainable living, you know, you notice everything is suddenly, you know, they're pushing all these key terms: smart this, smart that, you know, sustainable living, progressive thinking, and the ultimate goal of that, I think, Wolf, is to get us away from being able to do exactly what you're talking about us doing right now. And you know, it's harder. You know, I read an article the other day where it said, I was reading about where somewhere, I forget where it was, I believe it was in Washington somewhere, but you can't even collect, they're making it illegal to collect your own rainwater.
Absolutely.
And you know why that is? Because water is going to be the next resource, the next resource that is going to become like fuel. Yep. Water is going to become the next oil, because we're going to inevitably have a shortage of water. It's been happening, and it's, being that I'm on the West Coast, you know, it's a lot more prevalent here and a bigger problem, but water will be the next resource. I tell people all the time, if you can invest in something, invest in water. It sounds crazy, but it's a huge commodity. And, you know, they don't want us to be self-sufficient, and that's why I think it's so important now, like you're saying, is to be able to figure out how to do that. Now, the problem is for people like me, for instance, I'm in a condo. You know, I'm in a condo. I have a little patio, and that's about it. But I do have a little patch of area out there where I could, if I wanted to, I could grow my own fruits and vegetables and things. And I've tried in the past, but I tend to have a brown thumb. So... you know, I think there has to be you know, a way for people who are in a situation like me, where I'm in, where you're in a smaller area, maybe you don't have land. You know, I have saltwater aquariums, and I have to use lights that are, you know, they're the type of light where you can grow plants. And I think maybe even figuring out a way to be self-sufficient almost indoors, you know, as well, for people in a smaller space, is something it's worth doing, because I'm telling you, if something happens, I'm not saying that there is, but you want to be able to have these skills. and it's just something that nobody's taught anymore. It's not in our culture.
Yeah, have you heard of aquaponics?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Brilliant system.
Oh yeah. No.
I mean, I'll just give you an example, because a lot of people do share that thing where, they just don't have the time or the energy or the money or the resources to do any of that. But, the thing you have to keep in mind is that it's not really about just becoming your own little city in your home, right? You have to start small, and you have to do little small things here and there to start off. I mean, I started off, growing my own pea sprouts and broccoli sprouts, and all I have to do is just pour some water once in a while, and you harvest that, and actually it tastes really good. You don't even have to cook it, and it's very, very nutritious, these sprouts. But look at, I've been to Detroit many times. I've actually, just across the border from me, but they have entire buildings that are abandoned, that have no purpose, and people are homeless and starving in many cases and have nothing to look forward to but, how to survive each day. Why has no one invested in, like you were mentioning, Infinity, a gardening tower, a tower of basically organic, hydroponic even food, that is, basically feeds itself. The hydroponics is amazing because all you need is electricity, the right nutrients, and a water medium, and they actually feed themselves, and you just have to harvest them. You don't even need soil, and you need light as well. But the thing is, it's so easy. We invest time in war and in clothing and in television shows and movies, but we don't invest in things to actually feed us or to have clean air or clean water. It's just phenomenal to me because, I don't really buy into a lot of the Venus Project and the kinds of plans they have, but I do like their ideas on, food production as a large tower of hydroponic foods. And the aquaponics is actually very interesting because you're getting a source of animal protein and a source of plant protein, because the fish actually produce the right minerals that fertilize the soil above, and the plants release the right stuff, oxygen, that the fish need.
Yes.
It's just amazing.
Well, naturally speaking, the way that the world is set up is that it is very self-sufficient and very sustainable as far as everything organic is concerned. Nothing gets wasted, and when something's time to, how should I say, die or expire, it just does. It's just part of the process. But while everything has life, everything complements each other, and everything happens kind of like for a roundabout, for very simple terms, a reason. And I think that once, obviously the genie is out the bottle, we have, mankind itself has so many great creations that benefit us, that are inorganic, that are not natural, that are completely plastic and synthetic. We are at the crossroads of having that balance now, where we can have both a sustainable earth that is natural to the law basically of nature, and also the availability what our brains and our hands can create in our synthetic environment, because there is not going back. It's not like we're going to do away with electricity and a lot of the technological advances that we've had in the past. Since day one, it's always been a technological advance technically, but as far as the modern age is concerned, we're not going to go back on that. So how do we balance that it benefits us and it benefits the world we live in together? And I think we're at that crossroads. I still have faith in humanity. I think we might get to that point, though there might have to be some ugly bumps in the road, so to speak. But I think in the larger scale of things that, we have a basic tendency to want to survive, and we obviously are not isolated individuals. We human beings tend to do better in communities as opposed to other species or animals do. We're not loners, though we can be loners, but that's not also in our nature. It's for our betterment to actually be in groups to a certain degree, of course, with our own privacy. But again, it is that we have to come up with that delicate balance. And I'm looking at the document here, and perhaps maybe we want to go into another topic with some other bullet points.
Yep.
And I'm just looking at, why don't we go into energy harnessing? And let me just read off the bullet points of that, and then I'll pass the mic back over to whoever wants to pick up. So it's energy harnessing, and we have water harvesting, sewage management, wood burning systems, heat pumping, transportation technology, hydropower, wind turbines, solar power, and insulation. That's a lot. So let's dig into this.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look at just the fact that we have so much there available for us. If people haven't heard of Victor Schauberger, I suggest you do, because he was one of the first people to actually talk about free energy in Austria. And he was actually using free energy without any real mechanisms or machines. He just kind of arranged waterways and rivers in a certain way that they would vortex and produce just the right amount of energy to actually power all kinds of things. It's pretty fascinating.
I'm sorry, what year is this? Is this person?
Around the 1800s, actually, before Tesla.
Okay, you're talking
yeah.
like mid to late 1800s.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, just for a reference point, great.
Yeah, yeah. And he was a naturalist too, and he had some very wonderful philosophies. But when we're talking about water harvesting, this kind of goes back to that topic of rainwater, and actually having a source of water constantly for you, so you don't have to basically rely on the grid in order to have running water. And I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, my water was shut off, and I was defenseless because I had bottles of water available, but it's not running. It's like stagnant, and you can't shower, you can't bathe, you can't wash your dishes. You're done. Eventually, it did turn on back, but I'm just saying how dependent we are. It's just amazing. And when you look at sewage management, when water shuts off, you can't go to the bathroom. And people realize that because you have to look at, what I suggest looking at is definitely compost toilets, things you can actually dispose of, because our feces attracts a lot of parasites and flies, and that's not really a good thing as well. So you have to find a way to contain all of that, right? Because
I wonder if there might be some value in relearning how things used to be, like say before the turn of the century, before indoor plumbing was the norm.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? And that's why I say relearning, because obviously at this point in time we are so dependent on the machine that most of us have no knowledge of that stuff, including myself.
Yep. I suggest people look into gray water systems.
Right.
And earth ships as well. And I'm not saying, go out in the desert and make yourself an earth ship, but we can actually utilize a lot of the same principles in the homes we have, where, instead of actually wasting the water that, you wash your dishes with or that you flush your toilet with, you can recycle that and filter that out to use it again. It's a genius system. I don't know why it hasn't been implemented yet on a mass scale. But yeah, gray water systems are very interesting. Just like wood burning. I mean, I would suggest people look into rocket stoves because, you can have all this food, but a lot of it you have to cook. You can't just eat raw all the time. And, to have a rocket stove is very simple. They have many different designs, but it basically doesn't need electricity. You can use wood, you can use coal, all sorts of different variations. It's actually amazing that despite the problems we have, there are actually far more solutions than we give them credit for. It just goes far and all the time. I mean, I'm not saying like one method is better than the other, or you should invest in solar panels or whatever. I mean, it's all to your own discernment. What works for you, what you have money to spend for, because it will take time and money and energy. But look at our world today. We pay interest on so much, and we work ourselves to death. We have no time left in the day except to watch TV. And we pay taxes to actually support wars. So maybe we should start getting rid of that, and then people can actually have the time to spend, gardening, or to actually meet with each other, or philosophize, whatever,
I think most intelligent people completely would agree with that. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the intelligent people are controlling the direction of the world anymore.
Right.
Because all of those resources that we willingly pay in those taxes, they are going not for the betterment of the planet or humankind, but for wars and for whatever else the powers that be see fit. And I'd like to see more people taking matters into their own hands with learning these skills and actually doing them. That's the thing. With the gardening, with being sustainable, and if we had everyone doing that, then no matter what the powers that be decide to do, we would be less dependent on their machine. If we quit feeding their machine, it will starve to death.
Yeah.
Don't have to slay the dragon. We could just quit feeding it. But the only way we can do that, of course, everybody's got to eat. Everyone needs water. Yada yada. We need those things, but they can be provided in another method rather than relying upon the machine, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think everything that we're discussing is kind of like in a post, for lack of better words, petrodollar monetized world. The world that we live in right now is very much still run on that model, and it's still thriving for those that benefit from it. Some say that it's on its last leg. Some say no. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. Only time will tell. I personally don't think it's sustainable. For how long, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. It could be tomorrow. It could be another 100 years. God forbid. But the bottom line is, though, it needs a change, and going about that change is quite difficult when, again, the average person is just content and docile to a certain degree in their current existence of just having to make some money, pay their bills, and have a little extra money on the side to do nice things with their family or themselves, depending on their lifestyle. And until the problem that we see affects that portion of society, and that's not only just in the West, that's also in the East and everywhere else in the globe, we won't really be able to work together yet. I feel it has to be, because it has to be you're talking a mass amount of people wanting to come on board with something like this. Something would have to happen where we say enough is enough. This is no longer sustainable. We do have alternatives and solutions. We may not have all the right ones all the time and everything, but we definitely have a good model to work off of. And there's a lot of people much more professional and and learned in this type of topic than I could ever be to really give a plausible case if you're going to present it in front of a council, say, for lack of better words. But obviously the major thorn in the side is a money-making system and the greed and the me, just about me, and how every man for himself thing, which is the paradigm they've created. Everyone is, it's about what can I do, how much money I can make, and how I can live my life, which is important. Everyone should have their own individualism, obviously, and do what they want to do. But also for the greater whole, as far as, again, sustainability as a future, as a species, there are definitely a lot of things that pause for concern that may not be, if they are affecting us now, but the greater effects may come later on. It's kind of like a disease. You show symptoms, and then you get little disruptions, but the doctor tells you maybe another 8 months from now it's going to turn into a full-blown whatever, which is kind of similar to what we're going through right now, metaphorically speaking. One thing I wanted to talk about here in the energy harnessing is, out of all the different techniques you think, guys, as far as alternative to energy, what do you think is the most sufficient on a large global scale that we can use as a model? Or is there one?
Yeah, you can go chat if you want.
Well, I mean, it depends on if we're going to include Nikola Tesla's zero-point energy, or we just got to let Westinghouse keep that patent and pretend that I don't know about it. Otherwise, we need some... I would look again back to the turn of the century. How were they producing power before these electric companies and electric power plants? Most of it was water and wind, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yes.
Windmills.
So it seems to me that there's probably a lot of value in that. If we had various stations set up that would produce the kind of power we need. Hold on, maybe there's another direction, though. Maybe we might look at a society that's not so dependent on electrical energy,
Yeah, I'm interested as well, because there's been a lot of great work done in terms of free energy, in terms of just very simple solutions for our so-called quote-unquote energy crisis. I suggest people look at a TED Talk by Dan Nocera. He's a MIT, I think he's a Harvard professor, and he basically uses the same process of photosynthesis in order to split water, contain that hydrogen and the electrons produced from that, and have basically, I think the actual talk is called personalized energy. And he actually has an entire study after study of how this can be done. And of course, you're not hearing about it. Another one is Justin Hall Tipping's carbon nanotubes, and how you can have basically a way to take solar power, put it on any surface, because carbon nanotubes are translucent, they are flexible, and you can put them on your cars, and your car can actually act as a solar panel without all that crazy mechanical things like that. And I do want to shout out to Four, who is talking about chemtrails and the spraying, and well, what if you have a community garden and they're just spraying it all with aluminum and barium? Well, what I have to say to that is, why are we allowing them to spray in the first place? Why are people oblivious to this? Infinity, you bring up a great point when you talk about, people are just not caring or not doing any of this stuff. Because personally, from my experience on a Saturday night, what people really want to do is just party and get wasted. They don't really give a damn about, reading about anything. So ultimately, all of this information is useless unless there's that spiritual or metaphysical transformation that needs to take place for people to actually say, well, listen, this is more important than whatever has been programmed into me to believe. I think that there is a bit of an overlap in these things as well. I mean, we can start becoming self-sufficient, but of course we can't do it overnight. And there has been a certain sequential series of steps that have led us to this point of slavery, dependency, corruption, whatever. And we have to basically reverse that sequence because, I don't want to give up this technology that we have. I don't want to give up the internet or, cell phones. I think they're very useful. However, they're damaging us in some ways. Why don't we just tune them to frequencies that don't harm our brains? Or if we want vaccines, why don't you just have a vaccine that's just basically an extract from a superfood or something like that, instead of all the toxins that they put in. But the thing is, it's going to take some time to change this world, but we have to take it one step at a time. And we have to definitely address every single problem with a different solution because, people always talk to me like, well, what can I do about it? What am I good for? If you know a lot about chaos theory, it states that one insignificant, quote-unquote, individual can cause changes that are global or affect everything. And so just by living your life in a certain way, you are literally charging this reality with a certain mindset. And I know that's a little hard for people to understand, but think about how people interact with each other, what kind of people you associate with, what kind of decisions you make, what you speak. Ultimately, all of this comes down to respect, because if we can't work with each other, then none of this will ever happen.
I like what you said about the use of technology, because I don't want to go back either. I like running water, kind of partial to air condition, even like this internet thing. Pretty good idea. Yeah. However, I think technology, if we, the people, were in control of technology rather than the few, technology could be used to free people up rather than confine them, monitor them, and imprison them.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's the judge, jury, and executioner. It can be, or it could also be a great tool to for us for a further progression, whether it be something simple as communicating and sending pictures of each other's dogs, or something as complex as the next geothermal technology that we might use to sustain us for the next 500 years. It runs the gamut, and I always look at technology, as much as I enjoy it, as a tool. it's no different than the hammer, a lot more complex than the hammer, obviously, but it's still
Right.
essentially a tool like it, and it could be used for many different purposes. And like anything else, it's what kind of footprint what kind of print, handprint, footprint, whatever the case may be, we leave upon it. Um, Unfortunately, guys, Tiffany's having technical issues, so hopefully she'll come back to the show. It's the Scroogle connection, whatever the case may be. It's way out of our control, but we definitely hope Tiffany comes back to join us. So let's, Wolf, why don't you pick another topic with bullet points to talk about, and we can get into that as well, please.
Yeah, I actually am very passionate about preservation, so maybe we can talk about that. Um, it's interesting because a lot of people kind of squirm when they think about pickles or, I guess preserving food and, probiotic stuff, but it's actually very, very beneficial, and I cannot state that higher enough because, I don't want to offend anyone's particular diet, but when you actually ferment, whether it be vegetables or fruits or even bread, drinks, anything, you can ferment anything really. You basically multiply exponentially the nutritional content of whatever you're fermenting. And not only that, but you're actually making it last longer without genetically modifying it or adding some kind of ingredient artificially to keep it on the shelf. If you have animal meat products like meat or something like that, you can keep that salted or something, and it can stay for many times. That's what jerky is really accomplishing there. Pickling is a very interesting one because it can stay for months. I mean, we didn't always have refrigerators, and sometimes, and I've had issues with this as well. You'll buy a brand new refrigerator that looks fancy and nice on the surface, and it'll just crash week after week, and you have no idea what's going on. And you have to have a certain kind of safety measure in place, because if you can't keep your food from going bad, then what good is it?
Absolutely.
But also, it actually is more beneficial than that. I mean, for instance, I am a huge drinker of kombucha, and for those of you that don't know that, or call it by the Canadian term of kombucha, it's basically a fermented beverage from Japan and Siberia, and actually even all sorts of places around. It's fermented tea with yeast and bacterial culture that basically is more refreshing than water, because it has all of those, not only electrolytes, but probiotic organisms that help us digest all of our food. And that's why when you take antibiotics, I strongly recommend you take probiotics after the fact, because antibiotics actually kill a lot of the beneficial organisms in your small intestine, your duodenum, that you need. I mean, there's more bacteria in your body than there are native cells,
Right.
Wow.
So,
Wolf, would there be any benefit to people looking at a change in diet? I mean, now here in the U.S., we're primarily meat eaters, heavy starches, lots of sugars, those kind of things. But is there something that is easier to produce, that is more sustainable, that's better for the earth, and actually is better for people? When you mention digestion, in the East they say prana is breath, and we only have so much of a life force. And during digestion, the human body uses most of its energy to digest food, especially heavier foods like meat, potatoes, things like that. And people who have a lighter diet, well, they say you can actually increase the lifespan of most mammals by decreasing the amount of food they consume, because it's drawing that prana or that energy or that chi merely to digest these heavy foods.
That's exactly right. And I see Universal Brother talking about kimchi. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff when you get into this. Caloric restriction is one of the most studied things out there, and that doesn't mean having a diet soda every day, but we are so used to the idea of basically gorging on food all the time. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the food we consume is nutritionally deficient. and that's why we constantly eat and eat and eat, and we don't actually get anything. But when you have actual food, I mean, like real, and I hate to use the term organic because it's just normal, you know, you don't really have to eat that much. It's amazing. I made my own, I guess, like kind of like scones or buns just out of millet and water, and cooked them in ghee, and I am full after about 4 of them. I mean, it's incredible because it's just so dense with all kinds of nutrients and stuff like that. And a lot of people that are vegans or paleo or anything like that, I mean, you have to listen to your body, obviously. You can't just subscribe to a diet without actually, knowing how it affects you. But, the argument for vegetarianism is pretty strong that, you take less land to grow vegetables and to keep livestock. That's pretty true, but then, on the other hand, there's a lot of things in animal proteins that we cannot substitute with vegetables. But it's really how you see it, because you could eat fish all day. I mean, a lot of us were traditionally on the ocean or on the coastline, and all we pretty much ate is fish. But now that's pretty much not a really good option because of how toxic fish are today, especially on the West Coast. But you're talking about like prana energy, and I think that's such an important thing to discuss, because you should really be having a kind of ritual practice with the kind of food you use. And I don't mean to talk about like sacrificing or something like that, but when you eat, it's not just to survive. You basically have to indulge, or a better word is actually to kind of connect with the food you're eating. Oftentimes when, a lot of indigenous peoples will start to eat, they will have a certain prayer, or they will actually really have an emotional response in their eating because it's just so good, as opposed to just, wolfing down, the last piece of fries or something like that. I mean, oh man, I could go on and on about this stuff, but basically, the point is that there's a certain kind of spirituality when it comes to eating food, and that doesn't mean religion or anything, but it's like a personal connection, because you are what you eat.
And that is also the original origin of prayer before a meal, is to, just like the monks who will meditate and project energy on their crops, and those crops will contain an abundance of energy and nutrition versus the plants and crops that have not had that intention put upon them.
Right. It's just like the Masaru Emoto studies, about water. And we're mainly water and electricity.
Exactly. And I love that because it's scientifically documented. It's observable, and that means that our intention is producing some measurable effect in the world around us. Maybe, I'm going on a stretch here, but there might be something to that with some type of energy source that we might be able to tap into. Also, we didn't mention before about technology. There's this exponential rise in what we understand. What's quote-unquote impossible today becomes easy tomorrow. And we might just be a handful of years away from something that can provide solutions to problems that we just never even imagined that we could overcome.
That's right. I feel like they've actually found it out already. They just use it for military projects. For me at least, anti-gravity is a lot of the future that we will be seeing, hopefully, in the next few years, because the idea that you can transport yourself without inertia affecting that is mind-boggling, because you can go anywhere. You can actually have no experience of drag or lift or any of the same Newtonian forces that make it dangerous. And so, but just imagine that for a second. All of the airports would be actually pretty much irrelevant, because everyone would have their own personal vehicle, take them anywhere. We may even teleport ourselves. And I know that's kind of way advanced for people, but you got to imagine what these people use is way down the line as to anything we've actually been told about, And and this is very much in tune with a lot of the natural solutions as well. One of the biggest crimes against humanity is actually the outlawing and criminalization of this little plant called hemp. Because, and I'm not talking about cannabis, but just hemp alone. This is not a drug. This has no psychoactive effects, yet we can't use it. And we can make everything from cars to books to paper to plastics to medical equipment that is antibacterial. And why don't we do that? Well, because we are. It's even a fuel. It's even a goddamn, building material for homes. That in Switzerland they actually build homes out of hemp bricks, and they're hundreds of years old.
Really?
Yeah. You can check it
wow.
out. The famous chateaus of Switzerland. I think chalets. Chalets. That's what they're called. And it's just mud and hemp fibers.
Well, functional obsolescence has made us that throwaway society where we don't see value. Well, first of all, we don't even make things to last, such as out of hemp. There's so many other materials we could use, but the functional obsolescence has been built into things to actually generate more income. So it's about making money rather than making progress.
Yeah, exactly. We live in a supposedly finite planet, and we have a system or economy of infinite growth. I mean, it's absolutely insane. How can you infinitely grow and use up all these resources constantly? I mean, you often see projections for business or something. Corporations, even that I've had family members work for, that you have to constantly go up. Profit needs to go up. Using of materials has to always go up. Infinite growth. I mean, and then you kind of step back and say, well, what is the economy? Economy is ultimately a fiction. I mean, it's just numbers on a screen. And yet we are basically plundering the fruits of this earth for this fiction, for this psychopathic model of society that we don't recycle anything, we just throw it away and move on. I mean, just look at mining operations and what's been done even to the Amazon rainforest, what's been done actually to the Gulf of Mexico, which the coral there actually produces a huge percentage of oxygen on this planet. It's incredible.
Wolf, I want to ask you this. I've asked other people this, but you have such an innate knowledge of these natural processes. I'm just curious what your take is on this. A little on the side, but
yeah.
Oil that's in the earth that we extract and pump and use to run our big trucks. What do you think that oil is used for? What does the earth use it for? If everything has a purpose and a reason, then surely that oil is producing some function inside the earth before we come along and drill it out. I'm just curious what you think it might be for.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually haven't really looked into that aspect as much, but I can imagine that, of course, it does have a purpose. It's not, fossilized remains, for sure. A lot of that actually comes from the magma in the planet. And I actually wonder if, that is connected with the natural processes such as volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. I mean, a lot of people even look into the whole hollow earth theory and, the massive amounts of cave systems on Earth. And I know I'm going a bit of a tangent here, but, oil is just basically hydrocarbons. We eat hydrocarbons. We're made of hydrocarbons. I wonder if oil is maybe just a storage for a lot of those processes. Because, if hydrocarbons are what fungi use to break down rocks into soil, and soil is used to grow plants, and the plants is used to feed herbivores, and the herbivores are used to feed carnivores, then maybe that's what it's about. It's almost like a stock of nutrients that are just waiting to be utilized. I don't know.
So you mean it wasn't put there to run our V8s?
No. Oh, of course, it goes without saying.
Oh, do we have a dead moment?
Oh, that moment of silence was brought to you by our sponsor.
Hey Tiffany, I'd like for you to chime in. Are you available to speak? Able to speak? Oh, it's frustrating because I see her avatar there. I just can't get her to join in the conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible. So obviously got scroogled for a second there. So do we move on to another topic as far as the different bullet points, or are we still on the energy harnessing?
Yeah, but we can actually move to actually remediation. I think that's a very important topic.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, I actually did a show about this as well. I think a couple of weeks ago, and if people haven't heard of again, I'm just kind of, I guess, sponsoring TED Talks all over the place here, but they do have some little gems here of information. There's a guy by the name of Paul Stamets, Stamets, and he's a mycologist, so he studies fungi, and he actually put out a TED Talks presentation about 6 ways that mushrooms can save the world. And that is mandatory information for anyone that is looking for solutions, because when you look into mycelium, which is basically the root system of fungi, but it's not anything like plants. People just think of fungi as just weird plants, but really they're a different kingdom altogether. These are external nerves, external stomachs, external networks. I mean, the internet itself is basically based upon this concept that mycelium is everywhere. And wherever you're walking, it knows what you're doing, it knows what's going on. And there's a lot of interesting studies been done with this stuff because it actually has amazing filtering capacity. It has amazing capacity to soak up oil from damaged environments. So for instance, if you have an oil spill or just a bunch of beach sand that you just put a barrel down on, you can inoculate that with mycelium spores and it will actually soak it up, because mushrooms break down the same bonds that hydrocarbons are used to put together. And when they do that, it opens up this environment for insects, for birds, for other plant life. And you turn what was essentially a dirty wasteland into an oasis of life again. And this is the concept of mycoremediation, turning the toxins in our environment, neutralizing them, and actually creating abundance out of them. The same thing can be done, in rural environments where we have lots of fertilizer runoff. I mean, it's a huge problem here, even in Canada, because we have farms all over the place. They produce tons of unwanted nitrogen, and that all seeps into groundwater and into rivers. I mean, all the manure that's produced from factory farms is just disgusting. But if you put some burlap sacks, you fill them with some mycelium, and you make almost like kind of a barrier dividing the water systems from that runoff, you can actually filter all of that, all of the water that's been basically contaminated, and what you get on the other end is just normal water. So there's a lot of amazing applications when you look at this stuff. I mean, people even go as far as pesticides. Why do we use pesticides? Well, because Rockefeller-sponsored Green Revolution allowed us to, basically use petroleum-based products again to spray our plants while wearing suits to prevent people from dying. And of course, we eat that on a regular basis, quite unusually so. And it doesn't have to be that important, because if you're worried about ants or termites in your home, you can leave a bunch of mycelium spores out there. They'll take it to the nest, and these certain entomopathogenic fungi, which basically parasitize insects, will basically kill all of them in a very natural way, and then you have a permanent solution to all of that. And the studies are amazing because they're not even that advanced. They just kind of don't even use any implements at all. But this is just one avenue of actually healing the world, literally, because God knows that has to happen. After we kind of step in the right direction. It's going to take some time. I mean, just look at Fukushima. That's radiation. And actually, I've been wondering about Fukushima as well, because fungi can actually live off radiation. They don't need light. They don't even, well, they do require soil, but there are a lot of fungi that are waterborne as well. But that's an interesting thing. I mean, even hemp has been used as well. I think Masaru Emoto himself actually talked about that. But these are all problems that we can address using natural solutions. I mean, I always think of the interesting analogy that nuclear bombs produce a mushroom cloud, and it's almost like a hint from the universe as to the solution to that kind of radiation stuff.
That's a great point there. A great analogy. It's like right in front of our face. It's like right under your nose. You don't see it.
Yeah, exactly. So, once you find out what these species are capable of doing, it becomes very clear that these are guardians of the environment, that you'll find them in conjunction with forests, in conjunction with mountains, any kind of environment. And actually, the largest organism in the world is a mycelial mat that is a couple square miles wide, and it's only one cell layer thick, but it's strong enough to hold itself. It's pretty amazing. It can break through asphalt and all that stuff. But
really?
yeah, I hate to kind of go on a tangent. Oh yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, that's yeah. But that's the thing about toxin neutralization. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to go back, as you mentioned Fukushima, and there's a lot of things going on with Fukushima, and there are people, there's crazy, yeah. I wouldn't say crazy, but there's some very serious accusations on some, how should I say, far out tangents about Fukushima, just from the simple radiation in the water in the ground still to potentially HAARP being used to harness the radiation out there. Now, whether you agree with or believe in that, that's another story, but it's out there. But as far as the fungi is concerned, it is able to adapt to the radiation, or will it be contaminated itself?
It literally feeds off of it. There's an interesting thing you can look into as well with Candida, because we have fungi in our bodies as well. Yeasts, Candida albicans. It's a huge topic right now that's very under discussed in health and medical circles. But basically, the theory now is that at least alternative medicine, is that a lot of the toxins we consume that are basically all around us are just feeding these candida, these yeasts, and they proliferate through our respiratory tract, through our digestive system, and get out of control. And it basically has a lot of the same signs as cancer, because cancer are out of control dividing cells. But no one really actually discusses what those cells are, and there's a potential possibility that they're actually yeast. They're not even indigenous to your body. You kind of get them when you're born. And we do need a certain amount of concentration, because the body actually uses these yeasts to contain these toxins from actually killing our own cells. But if you're exposed to toxins forever and ever, it becomes problematic. And some people have even suggested that chemotherapy doesn't actually kill your cells, but it actually feeds these candida yeasts, and it's the yeasts that kill you. So it's interesting. It really is. But I don't know. There's a lot of things out there, and we're just on the cusp of it. It's just a matter of implementing it. And, not asking permission, but really mandating all our governments, all our institutions, all our industries to do this stuff, because it's in our own best interests.
Yeah, it seems like everything that's in our own best interest is going the polar opposite of that, is going in somebody's pocket's best interest, unfortunately.
That's true. And that's why I'm curious as to why we, the people, can do things on our own to implement these changes that will affect the greater good without asking the permission of the machine. Because the machine's answer will always be no. You come up with the greatest idea. Tesla did about 100 years ago, but the machine said no. And so I'm interested in things like people wanted to go out and begin those gardens, like we were talking about earlier. That's something that we can take the initiative on. We don't need anyone's permission. We could just merely change our mind and our behavior, and that ripple effect will, in fact, change the world without asking for anyone's permission to do it.
Yep.
Yep. You mentioned two key things: attitudes and behaviors, and
right.
That is where the psychological, and the physical starts and ends with. If we, as myself, if I can change my attitude and behavior and attune it more into what needs to be done, and it's, it's in increments, it's in little steps, it just makes it all the better. And if every individual did that to whatever degree they could, that best fits their sustainability, I think that would be a great start in a way that we could possibly unite, for lack of better words, in this struggle, because it is a struggle. I mean, this is a extremely uphill battle, but the good news is that we have solutions. It may not be perfect, and it may not be the best, but there are solutions out there that are quite viable and really should be used. It's almost a no-brainer in certain things. Like, why aren't we using this again? Because,
because it's been planned in advance to actually do the opposite. I mean, depopulation and stuff. And I do see a lot of people in the chat talking about nukes as hoaxes and stuff like that. Well, regardless of the fact, how do you explain the complete loss of life on the Pacific coastlines? There's been a dramatic reduction in the diversity of shore species. I believe even killer whales or any whales for that matter, haven't given birth in about the same time span as when Fukushima took place. There's a lot of things going on here, and just to kind of reiterate, because this planet will continue on regardless if we are on it. It's really humanity's existence we're talking about here, because if Fukushima is really getting out of hand more than usual and is a possible extinction level event, then we'll be wiped out. Maybe a lot of mammals will, and reptiles, but you'll see insects will be there. Fish probably will exist in some different capacity, and life will continue on. We don't have to worry about saving the Earth. We have to save humanity. I mean, it's kind of like Robert's show as well, but that's what it's all about. We are the vulnerable ones here because we're the ones out of line, because we allow these people to exploit our own ignorance, and thus we control ourselves in a way. It's very, very crazy when you think about it.
It is quite insane when you look at it from that point of view. Again, it's like a no-brainer. And I'm a simple guy, I'm not very complex at all, actually, and I try to simplify things the best I can, and I just scratch my head it's like, wow, man, I can't believe we're still going down this path. But then again, I can believe it, because if you put in the profit-driven system and the profit motive, then it does make complete sense. I may not agree with it, and I might not like it, but at least I understand it, that why it is not the way it's supposed to be. And when I say supposed to be, I'm not referring to any utopia or anything like that. I mean, there always will be situations where conflict and problems will arise to whatever degree they do. It's just how we deal with them. And again, it's from our attitudes and behaviors. How well are we sustained in our mind, our mental state, our capacity to want to make things better from an individual basis, and then from there it goes outwards. So Chad, you want to chime in with a few things, please?
Wow. Again, I want to say thanks to Wolf just for even bringing this to the table, because this is the kind of information that is beneficial. It's going to help us in some ways or another, and we're not focused on that most of the time. We're being diverted in circles. We're chasing the unsustainable solutions or the quick fixes, and I'm not much of a farmer. I really don't know much about it. I wish I did, because I think sustainability for the future is going to come from having those skills, not just stuff. A lot of people are interested in becoming or preparing for whatever might be coming. A lot of times they think about stuff. Okay, I've got to get this, I've got to get that, I've got to get water, food, sources of protection, this kind of stuff. And while all those things are needed, they're not in an unlimited supply. There's no way that you can store enough water to survive forever, or store enough food to survive forever. So there's going to have to be some changes made that's going to take all of us to do. And I know that even myself, that's why I need the community. I need people like Wolf who know more about this stuff than I even want to, because that's not my thing. Everyone has their thing. We can all offer what we can do, but we're going to need people who understand these natural processes. That might be the only thing we have left.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, if I may, it's interesting because we don't really need to get rid of this system. I mean, not completely as of yet, because the only problem with the system is that it's run by psychopaths. That's why it comes out psychopathic.
That's
And
right.
if you put people of integrity, namely, people that are just looking out for humanity, just acting as administrators, not just putting their surveilling every aspect of our lives, just managing infrastructure, because that's all government really is. Politics has no place in government. We actually will find that we can use the system to a lot of our benefit. I mean, even profiting in business, that can be made more ethical. We can have quality products. We can have people that advertise fairly. We can have all this stuff. It's just the way it's being used is just against us, basically. They always say the customer is always right, but then they contradict that by saying it's all about profit.
Right.
And it's crazy because if you own a store or a shop, you can attract a lot more customers just by being ethical, just by having quality things, by having that milk of human kindness that comes along with just being a regular human being. And
that
a
goes
lot of
along with the
this,
long-term thinking
yeah,
instead of the short-term profits that most companies and corporations are solely devoted to.
exactly. I mean, they even have laws in place that say corporations must profit and only profit. So who then do we believe? I mean, they're passing legislation that basically infringes upon us and invokes, a society that is basically against itself.
Why is it that, surely there must be a way, and I'm not saying I have it or anything, I'm just saying surely there must be a way for corporations to profit by doing good. And by good, I mean sustainability, mutually beneficial to everyone involved rather than the 1% that owns it. Surely there must be a way for them to go ahead and make their little bit of fake money, go ahead and get that imaginary money that you worship. That's fine, but surely there must be a way to make the system profit by doing good rather than harm.
Yeah, easily. I mean, we should be rewarded for that. People should do that anyway, but if you need an incentive to actually do some honest good in this world, then so be it. I mean, a lot of people you'll find are actually just concerned about themselves, and it's actually pretty unfortunate that we have this predicament where people are selfish because the system trains them to be, not because it's kind of a human condition. And they'll only be concerned of, how much does this cost, or how much time do I have to invest, or how does this affect me? And, if we cater to something like, well, you could be healthier, you could look more attractive, you could, and I'm not saying it should be for vain purposes, but if that's what it will take for people to listen,
exactly,
then maybe it does some good. Because if you take cost, which is basically usury, it was actually condemned in times when it first came out. This is something that would be more richer, and I'm not just saying monetarily, but actually in their lifestyle. Same thing with who do we owe these debts to? It's completely fake and illusionary. All these loans that we come. Very interesting, because this is just a small tangent, but they don't have the money. You write your name down, and money is created from your name. It's not like this convoluted rabbit hole that many people think it out to be. So what is going on here? Who do I owe? Is this just me? And it's just amazing when people start to step back and look at the bigger picture, because we're basically running in circles. We're running on a treadmill and getting.
Uh-oh, we lost Wolf.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, it was cutting out, or at least for me, it was cutting out, and then it's like he bounced. Google got him there, but hopefully he'll be back with us. And of course, we've lost Tiffany as well.
Yeah, once again, Scroogle acting up beyond our control. I am going to see if I can just re-invite them. It seems like I have to keep inviting Tiffany back in because it just boots her out for some reason, and I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, this is a great topic. I mean, there's so many things that we can touch upon that could take hours upon hours, and there's so much research done on everything we're talking about. This is nothing new. We're not reinventing the wheel, but I think it's a great discussion nonetheless. Um,
It's also good to see the community of people in the chat room actually throwing out useful ideas. That might be one of the greatest resources we have as far as what's going to happen in the future is the ability to be able to pool our ideas together, because from them, that's where the solutions are ultimately going to come from. They're going to be mined out of the minds of men and women, not just by pulling materials out of the earth.
Absolutely.
Welcome back, Wolf.
Hey, you made it back, Wolf.
I seriously don't know what happened, man. It just kind of closed on me.
Are you there, buddy?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 second here. It is so slow for me, and my computer's not even funny.
Yeah, Wolf's back with us. I can hear him. I'm not sure if you can hear him there.
No, I can actually. Hey, Wolf, can you say hi?
Hello. Hello.
See, I can hear you, Wolf, but Infinity can't. Now, that is so strange because it violates all the laws of common sense that I know.
And I hear you right now, Chet.
Exactly.
Oh, now I hear you, Wolf. Welcome back, brother.
Right, there we go.
Nice.
Okay, fuck you, Google. You can't get one over on us.
Fuck you, Google Plus.
Well, not fuck you, Google Plus. He's a good dude. Fuck you, Google.
Yeah.
So let's touch on another bullet point here. Unfortunately, Tiffany has not joined us back yet. Hopefully, she will before we end the show tonight. Let's go on to another bullet point here, if we may.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think secondary products are pretty interesting, if you want to talk about that.
Lead the way, brother.
Because some of the most toxic things we actually buy and support and watch commercials on are cosmetics, are clothing items, even candles, for God's sakes. I mean, home cleaners, all this stuff that you use to make your home nice and pretty, make yourself all gorgeous and fabulous, are actually basically neurotoxins, excitotoxins. I mean, it's amazing. Even medicines. I mean, your liver actually processes every single pharmaceutical as a toxin, and that's why you pee it out, and that's why you actually have to keep having them, because it's not a natural compound. They always slightly change it so they can patent it. But in talking about this stuff, I mean, Ladder Rain, she goes into crochet and stuff like that. And it's fantastic because I would love to see people make their own products. I'm really sick of this whole corporate world where people actually pay for the logos instead of the quality. And they'll pay a very, very high price for that, for something made in China or whatever. And again, with the same thing, we don't need to actually do all of this, but some works. I mean, for instance, soap making can be pretty dangerous in some ways, but you can easily replace that with just aloe vera because you take the extract from that, you mix it with some water, you can add some nice little mint or whatever you want. I mean, hell, you can even make toothpaste. I make my own toothpaste since, oh God, I don't know when. But if you have some Celtic sea salt, some baking soda, any kind of baking soda, mix that and then add some food-grade hydrogen peroxide to that, and you have a very simple paste that is against any kind of oral cavities that you may even see. And of course, you can add coconut oil if you want, do oil pulling and all that stuff. But again, I haven't bought toothpaste for years, and this is something that people find is essential. Although I don't know how much money I've saved on that because I don't even know what the price of toothpaste is right now.
Wow.
But
that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's so simple. It's a little weird for people, but again, we live in a weird world, and
we sure do.
I take pride in being the crazy person, even if it takes me, to explain myself. But for me, at least, cosmetics are something that is basically thrust upon us. Personally, I don't think people really need cosmetics if they have a good diet and they get exercise and sleep well, because you'll just naturally look your best. But reality is some people like to pretend and put on masks and stuff like that, and that's fine. Um, Men and women, not just women. Men are equally as culpable in this whole practice. But just look at the ingredients, and I don't even know if they put the ingredients out anymore. It's all aluminum-based products. You know how hard it is to find a deodorant that doesn't have aluminum in it?
Hmm.
And and then people will look on Dr. Oz and they'll say, well, there's no studies that link aluminum with neurotoxicity, although aluminum is actually something that helps pathogens cross the blood-brain barrier. So what are you trying to tell me? And really all you need for aluminum is you can, I don't know, mix some coconut oil, some turmeric. I mean, all of these stuff are just out there waiting in grocery items and stuff like that. And possibly, you can grow your own stuff like that. I mean, I can't grow my own avocados, but because it's too cold here and it just takes a long time. But that's such an easy way to get a source of fats. And home cleaners. I don't know if you guys have. I mean, you walk into a grocery store and you'll see like product after product of different home cleaners, and it boggles my mind. Even laundry detergents. I suggest people look into what is it called? There's a certain type of nut that you can buy that's dried, as in, comes in a box or something like that, and you basically put that in a small little burlap sack, and you put that in with your laundry, and it actually acts as a detergent without all of the natural, or should I say, toxic elements and ingredients of Tide, or all that stuff.
Exactly, because people don't think about that, but all of that detergent and dishwashing soap and many other things, the cleansers that we use for bathrooms and sinks, all those toxic chemicals obviously go into the water supply.
Yeah.
Now, surely the drain's magical. When it goes down the drain, it just disappears off the earth, I'm sure. It doesn't actually run into the water supply again, does it?
No,
Okay.
it can't. Couldn't do that. But even what people wear, I mean, I've been looking a lot into all kinds of different alternative clothing. I mean, I know that sounds kind of silly, but the reality of the fact is they try to intoxicate us from every single angle, right down to vitamin pills. I mean,
Right.
it's madness. But you'll see often that men are actually one of the biggest victims of this, because just look at some of the stuff they put in boxer shorts, for instance, and the kind of impact that has on sperm count, and why people can't actually get pregnant.
Right.
It all kind of goes hand in hand.
You had mentioned
Yeah.
You had mentioned Emoto a
Sorry,
few
go
times before, and
Yep.
you know how they used to write the words on the glasses, and just the wording itself, obviously with the intent being put into it, but just writing the word love on a glass of water changes the molecular structure of water. And of course, we're water, we're mostly water. So I'm curious as to what the words written on our shirts have some influence on our molecular structure.
Perhaps. I actually think it's something very psychological, and this is another tangent, but it's amazing how this all connects to everything. But when you see the different logos and designs on shirts,
Yes.
and you're basically wearing that like a uniform,
Exactly.
these are sigils, and they interact with you on a subconscious level. And of course, that's why people pay a high price for them, because they're almost agreeing with that. And I know I wear a lot of the same kind of brands and stuff like that just because, I don't know, it's kind of like an aesthetic thing, but we really should not try to buy into that as well, because, you go shopping anywhere in the United States, and what's the main thing that people buy? Clothing items.
Clothing, yeah.
I mean, how many shirts do you need? How many sweaters and pants? Lululemon exercise, like it's amazing to me because I mean, there are actual tribes out there that just are basically naked, and I know that's not a reality here, but and shouldn't be, but you know, I don't know. It's amazing. It's amazing when I think about all the synthetic stuff that they put into this stuff. I mean, I mentioned even candlesticks because well, there's actual stores right now that just sell candles, and every single one are just synthetic aromas, probably fluorocarbons as well that actually are carcinogenic, and they're made of soy as well. They're not even made of beeswax anymore. So it's funny. I was going out with friends, and they'd say, "Oh wow, you gotta whoa, sorry, you gotta smell this. It smells so great. It smells like a forest or like an ocean." And literally, it's probably one of the most disgusting things I've ever smelled in my life because
It smells like
it's all
chemicals.
artificial.
Right.
Yeah, it smells like. Well, actually, look into esters. I remember doing a high school experiment where we created esters, and esters are basically what they use in all these aromas. You can make different esters make mint, different esters make rum or bubble gum or whatever like that. So it's all chemicals, really is.
Understandable. Wolf, we of course again lost Infinity. Thank you, Google. And if Infinity does not make it back here within the next 3 minutes, we will be bouncing off air since he started this hangout. And I'd just like to thank everyone that did join us. We're coming down to the almost to the top of the hour anyway.